Hello and thanks for tuning in to another episode of Formscan in association with Live Score Bet. Delighted to be joined by Johnny Ward this week to preview good cards at Newmarket and at the Curragh as well. Great Group 1 racing at Newmarket and some good racing at the Curragh as well. Johnny is joining me from the Stole press room. Johnny, how are you keeping?
Yeah, very well. Just buzzing for the weekend. It's just, I think it looks like the sun is kind of shining on you. It's actually lovely to hear, but the ground in Newmarket is turning heavy. It's a major change in the whole picture, and we try to do our best because I actually think between the Curragh, even Dundalk tonight, getting the Friday nights getting back going again, Listowel today, Newmarket tomorrow, and the Curragh over the weekend. I think it's a really cracking weekend for racing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It was kind of hard to pick a running order for this one, but I said we'll probably stick to Newmarket mostly on the Saturday, and we'll give a mention to anything in the Curragh we fancy as well, and then we'll move on to the Curragh for Sunday. But yeah, like you mentioned, the ground is turning quite soft in Newmarket. We'll start off with the 150 there, the Royal Lodge Stakes Group 2. Over the 1 mile, look, 2-year-old colts in here. Maybe they might be something that could emerge as possibly a classic contender for next year. But I think maybe on the whole, it's kind of a feel lacking a star. Possibly, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh in here. Luther in there, favourite for Charlie Flo and Kieran Schumacher. He was a good winner of a listed contest last time. I was a little bit surprised that Wimbledon Hawkeye wasn't favourite here, though. I thought he looked progressive in his last 2 starts in good company as well. And, of course, Puppet Master for Brian Rymore probably can't be ignored either. What was your view in here, Johnny?
I was actually with Luther initially, Emma. Charlie Fellows talking of him as a Guineas horse last year, or next year rather, when he won at Haydock the last day. He won the Ascendant Stakes listed race. And in fairness, that day, the favourite Age of Gold just didn't perform, but Luther oozed class in the race. He's by Frankel, and he said afterwards he's a really good mind, which a lot of Frankel wouldn't necessarily have. He said he's essentially one of the best kind of minds of a horse that he's trained. But the ground has gone heavy now, so that makes a completely different situation where Luther is essentially run on good to firm or good ground. And I'd be highly surprised if Puppet Master were in the same bracket as Luther next season. But he's by Camelot, and he was when he ran the last day Galway, he beat Starry Desert, who isn't a bad yardstick and absolutely bolted up, to be fair, and that was on soft ground. So the ground for me, just looking here now, he's sort of a 9-2, 4-1 chance. I imagine he will be popular. Royal Playwright, who has only run on good ground, is by Luke de Vega. He might come in a bit as well. Wimbledon Hawkeye, his run the last behind the line in winter, his might idea of the Derby winner next year in the Acomb Stakes, was an excellent run. And he's been kind of ignored in the betting all-start for whatever reason. But again, it's just, I don't know how he's going to handle the ground. So that's the reason with Puppet Master.
Yeah, I suppose he did go on that ground in Galway. Was it soft-ish yielding anyway in Galway when he won that day? And like you said, he's probably not going to be one of the Ballydoyle main contenders for the Classics next year. But Aidan actually has turned over a Classic winner winning this with Royal Dornoch actually beat Kamiko winning it in 2019. So look, the ground kind of makes this type of race harder. Like you said, a lot of these 2-year-olds haven't gone on this, what it's likely to be like in Newmarket. Look, I'm kind of a fan of Wimbledon Hawkeye, like you said. Just don't know what he's going to do on the soft ground. But I thought his first one in this race in the superlative earlier on the season, he looked like he was going to be tailed off, I suppose, with a couple of. He just kept on going. I thought his run then, like you mentioned, behind the line in winter and the Acomb was a really solid run. The line in winter is kind of early anti-post favourite for a couple of the Classics next year. So he's probably bringing the best form into the race. But like you said, the ground is kind of throwing a bit of a curveball in here. If I was going to back one, it would be him. But I can see the case behind Puppet Master there, just on this ground by Camelot. He's done it with a bit of a cup before, so it's a tricky one to start off with. I'm going to side with Wimbledon Hawkeye. Probably have the class above a couple of these in here, but we'll go on to the 225 then. The Sheevey Park Stakes, 6 furlong fillies Group 1, and this is an absolute cracker. Last year it produced Porta Fortuna, and this year I don't think it's going to let down either. We've got 2 unbeaten fillies, 2 Group 1 winning fillies. Johnny, I know you're a big fan of the two of them in here, I think, but Lake Victoria in particular, you've spoken about her a lot. Look, it's going to be a cracker. I suppose Babouche, she beat Whistle Jacket in the Phoenix Stakes earlier on the season in the Curragh, in Lake Victoria. Obviously a brilliant winner on Champions Weekend as well. How do you see this one panning out?
Absolute cracker, Emma. Like with the non-runners today, you can't be overly confident at all that we'll have the 8 runners for the 3 each-way places, which I think is so important in these races for turnover and for the whole outlook. But even so, you know, I was coming into the race thinking 6 furlongs for Lake Victoria. I mean, she was the first horse off the bridle at Curragh the last day in the Nagle, and granted, you know, her more exalted odds-on stablemate probably didn't perform on the day, but she was still very well on top of the line and still looks very, very. I'm talking about Frankel earlier. She definitely has a trait of slight, if not waywardness, she's certainly raw. Like she was still hard enough to steer for way more in the closing stages. Kind of ended up the stand side, and the same at Newmarket where she was very, very errant in the closing stages, well in control. Now her dam actually, who was by showcasing Quiet Reflection, went well on heavy ground. So I'm kind of hoping that she'll handle it. The one thing about the 6 furlongs here is that the ground will make it much more test than 6 furlongs. If she travels on it, I really struggle to see her being beaten here. I have massive time for Babouche, who beat Whistlejack the last day. But I'm surprised that Babouche has been put in so much shorter than Lake Victoria, who was friendless in the market really at the Curragh the last day. And how marvellous it is to see her turn up less than 2 weeks later. I really, really like this filly. I like her for the Guineas next year. There's so much ability there. Love how strong she is at the end of her races. And I don't remember Aidan O'Ryan ever really commenting on in relation to the ground for her. And I do feel trainers have got a handle on horses and will handle this, but it's probably risky enough to run her, to bottom her out for the season on bad ground unless he's confident enough she'll handle it. And as I say, the 6 furlongs on this ground will bring her stamina into play because she's definitely going to get a mile at least next season.
Yeah, I was kind of coming along the same lines as you there. She, I suppose, look, bedtime story coming into that race in Leopardstown was probably the all talking horse, but Lake Victoria's kind of one kind of creeping away in the background, kind of quietly getting there. Like you said, she could be a really, really exciting one for the classics next year. Just looking at Babouche, she looks really, really comfortable on quick ground, doesn't she? She's got the kind of really daisy cutter action. I'm not sure will she handle it if it gets really soft in Newmarket. The forecast doesn't look great, and like you said, 7-4 Babouche with our sponsors Live Score and 9-4 Lake Victoria. I'd probably be edging towards Lake Victoria there as well. She just looks like a really, really promising filly, and she was ridden quite cold as well in Leopardstown that day, and she just kept on getting there. But like you said, her dam was a sprinter, so dropping back on this type of ground, it could be probably right up her alley. So I'd say we're both in the same boat there, Lake Victoria, but a really, really exciting race, and probably 2 of the standout fillies this year, and probably pointers towards the classics next year as well. But we'll go on to the 3 o'clock then, the Middle Park Stakes, 6 furlong Group 1, another exciting one, Whistlejack, I suppose, back to the 2-year-old colts. He was beaten by Babouche, but turned out really, really quickly then to win in France shortly afterwards. Look, he's kind of even money odds on in places, but he's getting his ground here. We're kind of talking about plenty of the 2-year-olds not wanting this, but Whistlejack probably looks at his best, but a bit of a cutting ground. I'd say one of his best performances there was in Newmarket when he got a bit of softer underfoot conditions. I suppose Ides of March is the big opposition to him. He looked really, really good when dropping back in trip after being beaten in a couple of maidens. Do you see any opposition to Whistlejack here?
Yeah, Ides of March for me by Wootton Bassett, that would definitely be a positive in relation to the ground. The way he kind of goes through his races as well, he looks like a horse that's, you know, six furlongs is kind of almost a minimum for him. The last day he beat was the Atoe. He was a very solid type and absolutely smashed him and was strong at the end of his races. Sean Levy, who's obviously been seen to great effect, riding a couple of group winners, including classic winner for Aidan already this season in Britain. So Ryan Moore, I'm not sure this was as straightforward in terms of the pick as the betting would suggest. Remarkable stuff, as you mentioned, Emma. Like I don't remember the horse's name now, but the horse was a Beethoven back in the day who ran nine times or something as a 2-year-old. This will be Whistlejack at seventh run as a 2-year-old, and we're only in September, obviously, and obviously this is likely to be the end of the season for him, I would imagine. But a lot of these no-name Everest, Aidan's very happy to run them and just to run them away. Shadow of Light, who again hasn't run an answer on good ground by Luke de Vega, would be interesting, and I'd probably be thinking that there might be an on-run or two if you're having an each-way bet, but Ides of March to me is a big threat, already on form to the selection. And since he was beaten by Beckman first time out and the line in winter, when he was remarkably 5-4 favourite, despite the regard the line in winter has held it, he was 5-4 favourite that day. He's just progressed. Funny enough, he's only run at Curragh. Can't see why this would be an issue for him. And I'd be more hopeful than not that he'll handle the ground, in which case it's a massive chance.
Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd imagine it's between the two Aidan O'Brien ones here. And look, Whistlejack is definitely getting his conditions. And I think if he's at his best, he should win it. But I don't think he's a horse I'd put my life on at even money or even worse. I think he's.
It's hard, Emma, for a 2-year-old even like to have 7 runs. It's hard to keep being like he was trained to be a bit ready at the start of the season. We'll get to the tail end of the season now. And regardless of how you train horses, and we saw how Gavin Cromwell trained a horse to go from sort of a conventional campaign to win the Kerry National. It's hard for a 2-year-old to just keep on top of things. You know, their coats will change. The weather has changed, and for them to keep on top this late in the season, so you're always wary of odds on.
Yeah, he has been busy. Started off in April, beaten by Carroll County, and like you see there, he's had 6 runs since. This is his 7th one of the year. It's tough going, but he's obviously a tough enough horse if Aidan thinks he can keep doing it. I thought that run back in France just a week after the Phoenix Stakes was a brave move, but it paid off. And look, he has these conditions here. I think if he's at his best, he could be hard enough to beat. But Ides of March is definitely a worthy contender. He's looked very quick since dropping back to the 6 furlongs. But we'll go on to the big handicap of the day, the Vettery 6-5 Cambridgeshire. A 35 runner field and life score bet are paying extra places. I think you get paid out down to 6th place here, which will be a bit of a help. This song for you is the early market leader for Emmett Mullins and Colin Keane. Won the Northfields handicap, obviously, on Irish Champions Weekend last time. Did you have a fancy in here, Johnny?
I was interested in Curragh initially. He's one of the horses scratched, so you know those reserves might get in. I saw there was a bit of market move earlier in the week for Emmett's horse, and the bookies were running scared. And I think these headlines are almost a bit laughable at this stage, to be honest, the way things are going. It doesn't, and most markets aren't particularly lively, so bookmakers should be taking these bets, not kind of cutting prices left, right, and centre for the sake of a few quid on a headline, rather than taking the horse on, because like he beat Indigo 5 the last day and he's progressing. He's run under a penalty. This is really, really tough. And, as much as Emmett Mullins has booked Colin Keane, this is going to be really, really difficult for him. Best of luck to Jessica Harrington with Norwalk Havoc as well, who's a 3-year-old who's done well this season and handled soft ground well. But I'm going to go with one of the 3-year-olds in the race, and John Gosling has an interesting horse here in Rod de France. He's actually only run 4 times, Emma, but by Sea the Stars, lovely pedigree. I think the dam only really ran on good or fast ground like himself, and so you're taking a bit of a chance that a lot of Sea the Stars horses handle it and it'll bring his stamina into play. And he was just travelled very, very well at Yarmouth the last year. He was touched off in a bit of a bunch finish, but he looks like a horse that is just progressing, turns up quickly again, and he'd be a hopeful select for me in a small stakes race.
Yeah, it looks like a tough one. There was probably 2 that stood out for me. Like you mentioned, Norwalk Havoc there. Probably looks maybe in, like, when you're considering his form with this song for you, he probably looks a little bit overpriced at 12-1, given there was a bit of a move for Emmett Mullins' horse, I suppose. The bookies probably did one of it, but they were 2nd and 3rd in the Colin Quinn Mile at Galway. And watching the race back, I'd say Norwalk Havoc is probably the one I'd like to take from that pair if they met again. They're meeting here again on similar enough terms. I think it might be a bit of a pound or something in the difference. Really unexposed trio. I think only 7 career starts. That one in Galway was his first in a handicap. He had been kind of running in stakes company all along. Like you said, he handles the ground. He's one on heavy and one on soft as well, I think. I don't think the trip will be a worry at all. I'd say with an extra few yards, he might have even got up in that race in Galway. He's probably one of the more unknowns in the race, I suppose. So it'd be nice to see him on a big race, Jessica Harrington. One more that I thought maybe might be worth a bit of a chance at a biggish price. I think he's around 20-1 with live score bet. It's Benetois for that man, Billy Loughnane, I suppose, and David O'Mara.
Rider.
Yeah, oh God, he's brilliant, isn't he? And he's probably one you like to have inside in this type of race. He came over to David O'Mara, I think, from France about 12 months ago with a rating of 97. He had won a couple of races in France, and I think he was actually 2nd in a listed contest as well. He handles this type of ground, I'd say, which could be key enough. The only worry about him is the draw. I think you want to be drawn high, preferably in a race in this race. Normally, I think they can kind of get away a bit on the far side, but they don't really get caught again when they start coming up the stand sides when the big group comes up there. But he's drawn 6, which is a little bit of a worry, but it's a bit of a lottery this race. He stays the trip and further. I just thought his last couple of runs, he ran a nice race in York and Ascot, kind of staying on well, and looked like he wanted further. That was away just over the mile. He ran over 10 furlongs last time. He ran a nice race again. So look, he's won who should handle conditions. He liked the trip. He's a good rider on board. I think 20 to 1. He's probably worth a bit of a chance each way as well. Even though he has a bit of a draw to overcome there. But I'd say that's probably all we'll talk about in Newmarket. We'll have a little bit of a mention to the Curragh as well, the Goffs Million card on. Of course, I thought it was a little bit of a disappointing turnout though, Johnny, for the Goffs 500 and the Goffs Million. Only 10 in the 500 and 17 in the million, which, you know, or sorry, 14 in the million, even worse again. You know, you'd probably be expecting a bit of a bigger field for races of this kind of prize money, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and this is to do with the nature, the makeup of the race. I mean, it is a million, but I have to exactly clarify this now. But it's not cheap to run in the race at all. So like the incentive is there, and obviously you buy the horse, and that's the whole point. But like they're very, very disappointing turnouts, and to actually run in the race costs plenty of money. So you know, the races, it'd be great to win it. I'd love to have Apples and Bananas, who's, you know, raised 100, but you know, Anselo Canyon, who's an ace maiden winner, 4 to 1 to win all that prize money, 500 grand. I'd love to have the money that these owners have, but the incentivized nature of the race has certainly, you'd certainly question it this year when the turnout is so poor, really. And you know, would there be much excitement about this card where you have like very wealthy owners winning more money? I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough enough betting card as well, I think. Was there anything throughout the day that stood out for you as a betting proposition?
That race, that first race, that race was on about like Apples and Bananas. If you're to believe the form the last day, it was a good win for Dylan Brown McMonigal. The horse is very, very solid, handled soft ground. He might actually be a bit of a class act because it's really not that strong of a race. I mean, most of the horses in the race, Emma, this is what, the 3:45. Most of them haven't even won a race. Like, so Apples and Bananas who's coming here, probably Antelope Canyon most to worry about, who beat Curragh the last day. That's very solid form. But I'm looking at around about 5 to 2 here. It'd be surprising I'd be surprised actually if the Deauville horse, if the Deauville form weren't good enough to win this. He beat Puppet Master and Saratoga, 2 Horse of Aden, Starry Desert, who I mentioned earlier, beat McClarney. But the last day, crucially, he handled soft ground, and he's very straightforward. Probably make the run of gate 14, the Goffs Million. And I'm sure there won't be roar in a moment in the stands. I don't know if there'll be like a kind of a massive buzz about the place, but he'd be my selection. I think he should be short because it's really a glorified listed race and a glorified maiden in some respects, looking at some of the runners in it. Keep an eye out as well in the first race. Red Evolution, who's a horse that's been quite costly to follow so far by Maymas. It'd be interesting to see how he goes. I know they like him a lot, the yard, and taking on Bounty was a very interesting horse first time out. I always find the maidens at Curragh are really, really, really alluring and often the most interesting part of the Curragh maiden races. The Beresford as well, Emma, like there are only 5 runners. It seems to kind of fall in a bit weirdly after Champions Festival, and it doesn't look the best renewal of the world. I see Aiden has 2, Trinity College and Lamburn, who's cheek pieces on for the first time. It's kind of, I thought it was a very hard race to solve, and a poor turnout for a race that is obviously such kind of classic relevance down the years.
Yeah, it's probably not the most inspiring Curragh card you'll see, all right. Look, I'm kind of going to stay away from those Goffs races. I think they're kind of tricky enough to figure out. Like you said, Apples and Bananas, probably the class act in the million. I did like one in the Premier Handicap though. I thought Paul Flynn's Repel. He's won. I was kind of following him. He won here last time over the 6 furlongs under Keaton Kennedy, who's brilliant apprentice. He won an apprentice handicap on Cambridgeshire Day or something. I think it was about a month ago anyway. He was slapped with a fair penalty for that though. He's up £12 for, I think. Now, the manner he won was fairly impressive. I don't know whether Keaton actually dropped his stick or was he just going hands and heels, but it was like a piece of work for him basically. He kind of cut through the field very easily. He's dropping back to 5 furlongs again. He has tried the 5 before, but he just looks like a horse who's kind of improving the whole time. He could even be a better horse again next year, only a 3-year-old, of course, but like if you just watch the race the last day over the 6, he really kind of jumped and really latched onto the bridle, whereas before he was kind of only just travelling away okay. So maybe the 5 furlongs, he might be kind of getting sharp enough to try it again. The market's probably catching up to him a little bit, but I think Paul is probably a trainer who can really improve these sprinters, like Little Queenie, for example. Like he's improved her to no end. He's a 3-year-old. I think the handicap's probably starting to catch him a little bit, but I'd say he could run a big race here. I think he was in about 9 or 10 to 1 or something like that. So I'd probably take a little bit of an each way chance in that. I didn't really fancy anything else throughout the whole day in the Curragh. Like you said, it's probably not the most inspiring card. Interesting to see what kind of a crowd they're getting out tomorrow. But we'll go on to Sunday's racing, where there's probably a little bit more exciting action on there. I'd say the first one we'll have a little bit of a look at is the Weld Park Stakes, the 240. Yeah, the 240. So in here we've 10 declared. Group 3 for the 3-year-old fillies over the 7 furlongs. The UK raider Sir Mark Prescott, Ala Stella, had the 2 pieces on first time. She was behind Dreamy here actually last time, and Chris Hayes is booked now. And we've no betting for this one yet, but I'd imagine Barnavara, Heaven's Gate, Ala Stella, they'll all probably be up there, and Fiery Lucy as well. She's fairly closely matched with Ala Stella on that run behind Dreamy last time. Do you like any of these fillies in here, Johnny?
I was kind of with Fiery Lucy, Emma, as you say, without the prices. I wasn't sure she'd get the mile the last day. I'm still not entirely sure if she did or not. She sort of, I'd say, was interested in running, because she looked maybe a furlong out that she was going to win, and then her run sort of flattened out. She'd only run over sprint trips. Gavin Cromwell, I mentioned earlier on in the show, has had such a good year so far. But the ground was yielding when she was second to Heaven's Gate at Naas in that lucrative race. She seems to handle yielding quite well. She's by Without Pro, I think first season saw her by Franco. But she's really progressive, and I was impressed with her the last day, albeit in defeat. And the key for me is drop back to 7 furlongs. Kind of looks a trappy enough race. Like none of them look superstars. I think if she was an each way bet, each way price, you probably couldn't go too far wrong. As you mentioned, Ala Stella coming over. Again, hasn't run an easy ground, but I don't necessarily see why she should reverse the form over 7.
Yeah, I was kind of along the same lines. It'd be useful enough to have the prices here. It's kind of hard enough to want to assess without the prices, because, like you said, Fiery Lucy, I thought she looked good over the mile last time, but like I said, dropping back to the 7 furlongs probably will be a bit of a help. She's a tough filly, isn't she? I thought she might have even been coming to a run with Dreamy, coming with a run against Dreamy last time, but they're kind of talking about Dreamy as maybe a classic contender for next year. So looking back on that, it could be quite strong from Heaven's Gate as well. I suppose one you have to have plenty of respect for. She was third in the Albany. She has form over Fiery Lucy. That's over 6 furlongs, so over the 7, they have to reoppose again, I suppose. Look, it's not one I have a massively strong opinion on. I'd like to see the prices on it really before I'd come to any conclusions on that. So I'll probably give it a skip. So we'll go on to the 315 then. The 315 is the Renaissance Stakes, 11 in here in the Group 3 over the 6 furlongs. Definitely an interesting one with some of the younger sprinters coming up against the older generation. No prices again, but I'm going to take a fair stab that My Mate Alfie could be the favourite in here for Ger Lyons after another good win on Irish Champions Weekend. He's been tried at this level before. He was only just touched off in the Phoenix Sprint Stakes by Gimme the Beat Boys not too long ago at this track. So I'd say he's probably well worth his shot at it again. Johnny, anything in here you liked?
Yeah, he beat Torrey Vega that day. I was very much in the Torrey Vega camp first day on the Sunday of the Curragh, and it was a good performance. Like, beat him pretty convincingly, and he's a 3-year-old that's just progressed. Very, very likeable horse, and I'm not sure exactly what his ground preference is. He beat Anna Osira at the Curragh in June, but she definitely wants better ground, and it was yielding that day. So maybe we'll see how this works. Go Atletico, on the other hand, Emma, the more rain, the better. Won the race last year. That was actually his last win. He's a horse I have a lot of time for. Aidan McGuinness's horses are in good form. I know he was in theory he was 100 to 1 the last day in the Flying 5. He didn't run too badly. Probably more so I'd be disappointed that he was down. He was well held at Longchamp the time before that, but I don't think there's anything to suggest his horse has lost his way or anything like that. Perfect makeup in the race. Loves the Curragh. I again without price, but I feel he'd definitely be underestimated in the bet.
Interesting one in there. Yeah, look, I'd be wary enough of the UK challenger coming over. I suppose Carl Burke has had plenty of good fortune in the Curragh so far this year, so I'd be a little bit worried about Spy Catcher. He does have to give the weight away to some progressive kind of younger horses, which kind of makes me confident enough to take him on. But I think the British Raiders have had, I don't have the stats in front of me, but they've had some strike rate in the Irish sprint races. Whenever they come over here, they normally have a fair crack at it. But just one I thought down the very bottom there who was interesting is Super Stocks for Paddy Toomey. I was just really, really taken by the way she won that Platinum Stakes in Cork back in August. That was over the 7, but she travelled like a dream that day. She looks like she has a really, really high cruising speed form of that got a nice boost as well. Irish Champions weekend with Dance Night and Day winning for Ross O'Sullivan there. So form of that looks solid enough. She was maybe a little bit disappointing in Tipperary last time, is the only thing. But she was going around a bend that day. She's a big kind of leggy filly. Maybe it just didn't suit her. I'd say the straight track at the Curragh will probably be a bit more up quality. Dropping back into the sprints, it's interesting to see Paddy put her in here. And it's all I suppose depending on prices. I think on the tissue she's there 6 to 1. If she was that or bigger, I'd take a bit of a chance on her. I think she's probably one of the most unexposed in here. She's only had a few runs in her lifetime, and you know, quotes after all her races, they seem to think a fair bit of her. So look, she's interesting. Quite showcasing. She handles a bit of a cut in the ground. I don't think the Curragh is going to be as bad as they're going to get in Newmarket. I saw an update this morning saying they got 13 mils yesterday, but it's taken it quite well. I think it's only still kind of yielding, and they're only expecting maybe showers. So I'd say yielding and probably no worse, unless it changes now. But the weather here seems to be okay. So look, I think Super Socks, she could run a big race there. Price depending, but if she's kind of 6 to 1 or bigger, I'd have a little bit of a chance on her. But we'll go on to the next race then. The last race we're going to talk about in the Curragh, it's the Irish Cesaro, which this is a cracker. We've obviously had a massive upset in this last year with Nagle Straight, wasn't it? 150 to 1 for you, Horgan and Joseph O'Brien. Joseph kind of coming back again here with a strong string. I think he has 7 in here. Nagle Straight, last year's winner, back again, but only a fraction of the price. I think Joseph has about 25% of the field. I think 7 out of 30 or something like that. He's got 2 of the market leaders as well. Galway Hurdle winner Nürburgring and A Piece of Heaven, who was a one-time leading Royal Ascot horse, and I think the Euphrates for Ballydoyle as well is another one of those co-favourites. All are on 8 to 1. Plenty of big price ones can win this though, Johnny. What was your thinking along the lines here?
Yeah, they should be winning it with, I mean, the prize money, obviously every horse is trying, and the field at 30. So like basically if all these horses had the same price, they'd all be, or had the same chance, they'd all be 29 to 1. So that kind of shows like, you know, big price should be winning this. A Piece of Heaven, actually, I have to say I've been a bit disappointed with him since he joined Joseph. His run at Royal Ascot was solid, but he absolutely smashed the last day behind Grosvenor Square. Like he never, I know Grosvenor Square is very good, albeit he was just finding the ledger, but God, he just like, he was beaten by a horse rated in the 80s in the end. So I don't know, I'm kind of not sure what to make of him at the moment. The horse I was a big fan of for his previous trainer, but I'm going to go with the Chester Cup third here, Zandabad, who's obviously with Cathy O'Leary. Cathy O'Leary taking over from her suspended brother Tony Martin, but that run in Chester was just so eye-catching. Didn't quite see out the 2.5 miles at Ascot the last week. This horse hasn't actually won in Ireland, but his form in France is on soft ground, so he should have everything pretty much in place here in terms of the distance, the ground. Colin Keane booked. Sure, Colin had a pick of a few nice ones in this. Plantier, who was just under him as well. I was at Sligo when he won the maiden hurdle. He was only 11th the last day at Leopardstown. I wouldn't judge him too harshly on that. It might have just happened a bit fast for him. That was the race that Fighter dominated from the front. And it says officially he was beaten 12.5 lengths, but he wasn't that far off third, really. Like, and he's probably better than that. And his run in Sligo was on soft ground, and his form seems to be on soft ground. David Egan booked as well, so they'd be kind of my 2 against the field, small stakes race.
Yeah, he was an eye-catching one. I think when he won in Sligo, Willie got him from, was it Poland or somewhere weird like that, or Germany or something. He's won
Poland, I think, yeah.
10 or 15 races across Europe. Yeah, so an interesting one in there for Willie. And like you mentioned, that race in Leopardstown was messy, wasn't it? Wayne Hassett kind of just gave the winner a brilliant ride that day, kind of strung the field out from a long way home. So you could definitely forgive a horse for that kind of one. Kind of look, I'm thinking similar lines, Willie Mullins in here, but I was kind of drawn to Spasiva under Wayne Lord, ran the same race. Behind Fighter, they were kind of all kind of finished in a bit of a bunch there, so I wouldn't really be reading too much into that for him. But his run in Galway before that was quite good. That was on stable debut. He actually started his career with Paddy Toomey. He had 2 runs for him, I think, and then Sam Curling ran him in a maiden hurdle. And that run in the Connaugh's Hotel QR race in Galway was his first one for Willie. So he ran a great race, but he was third there on the Jodie Townend. And that race can be a bit of a springboard for Willie's horses coming into the Cesaro, which I think was 2 years ago. He had Echoes and Rain and Lot of Joy were 2nd and 3rd in this, and they had been 1st and 4th, I think, in that QR race in Galway as well. Look, I think he's probably a horse who is very unexposed. It's interesting that Willie put him into that Galway race on his first start for the yard, and it's interesting that he comes back here for this again. Put a line through that Leopardstown one. I just think 20 to 1. he's probably a solid enough each way bet. I think he won't have any problem with the trip, and yielding ground should be ideal for him as well. One other I had in here in franchise, but it's kind of hard to fancy her in any of her recent form. But like if you go back to that day she ran in the vintage Tippett and Goran, she'd have to have a massive crack at this. I think she definitely has the ability to win a big handicap off this mark, but just her last few runs in Galway, like they're kind of been a bit too bad to be true, really. Like after she won in Goran, I suppose you could be saying, but even talking about going for the Cadran or something like that after, she was that impressive on the day, in fairness. And the more rain, the better it will be for her. Shark seems to be convinced she'll stay 2 miles on the flat. But there's definitely question marks just around her recent form. You'd be cautious with her, but like if it's 20 to 1, if she's even bigger on the day, she might be worth a small little stake each way, just because she definitely has the ability. And her mark, I don't think it's too prohibitive at the moment anyway. And like kind of staying on that vintage Tippett form, then I suppose Countess de Tyrone has to have a bit of a squeak. She was behind in franchise that day, and she improved then for the step up and trip, I'd say, to win it down Royal. She's got the cheek pieces on. Haven't seen her in a bit of time now. She's 20 to 1 there. You probably won't get Paddy Toomey owners too often at 20 to 1. But I suppose my main fancy will be Spasiva at each way. I think he's probably a solid enough bet. I'd say Willie Mullins has probably had a bit of a plan for this fella, and he went to Galway, ran a nice race, and right off his last one, I'd say he should run a big one under Wayne Lorden there, 20 to 1. So we'll take the bigger prices on that one. I think we have covered the majority of the most exciting action over the weekend, I hope, and we've probably forgotten a couple of things, but plenty on. Johnny, before we wrap up, thanks very much for everything, but I'll ask you for a nap of the weekend.
Yeah, I'll actually go with Ides of March in the Middle Park at the prices. I do like him. As I say, I'd be concerned about the likelihood and the certainty of non-runners, but I don't see his big Wooden Bastards, obviously a massive sire for the operation. Early days relatively with them. This could be a good horse.
Very good. I'm going to go with Lake Victoria in the Sheveley Park. I think the ground probably won't inconvenience her as much as Babush. It'll be a cracker, but I'd say 6 furlongs on softer ground will probably suit her more than the favourite in there. I think 9 to 4 isn't a bad price about her at all. She could be a real classic one for next year. But we'll wrap up there. Thanks very much, Johnny, for all your contributions. Thanks everyone for tuning in. If you enjoy the show, make sure and like and subscribe. We'll be back on Monday with our normal review show.